The soft blue glow of multiple holographic displays cast an ethereal light across Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez's face. Her office, buried 3 stories beneath the Nevada desert, hummed with a quiet intensity that belied the significance of what was happening above the screens. Outside the heavily shielded complex, the world continued its ordinary dance. Commuters navigated morning traffic, coffee shops filled with the chatter of early risers, and most humans remained blissfully unaware of the cosmic conversation happening just beyond their perception. But Emma knew different. Every subtle transmission, every fractional energy signature, told a story far more complex than the mundane world around her. The latest intercepted communication from the Galactic Council's diplomatic channels lay spread across her primary display. It was nothing more than a routine assessment, a classification document that would have seemed laughably bureaucratic to anyone else. But to Emma Rodriguez, it was a masterpiece of unintentional revelation. Pre-spaceflight civilization of minimal strategic importance, she muttered, her finger tracing the holographic text. The words were clinical, dismissive, wrapped in layers of diplomatic language that spoke volumes about the alien perspective. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Her secondary communication officer, David Chen, appeared in the doorway. Unlike the stereotypical intelligence analyst, Chen was built like a former quarterback, his muscular frame contrasting with the delicate technology surrounding him. "Lieutenant, you're going to want to see this," he said, his voice carrying an edge of excitement that immediately caught her attention. The additional data stream populated her main display. Spectral analysis, quantum communication fragments, and electromagnetic anomalies danced across the screen, each piece a puzzle fragment that most would dismiss as cosmic background noise. But Emma Rodriguez was not most people. Her team at the Extraterrestrial Intelligence Division had spent years developing computational models that could detect patterns invisible to traditional analysis. Where others saw randomness, they perceived communication. Where others perceived silence, they heard whispers of an intricate cosmic dialogue. The Galactic Council's report was more than just a bureaucratic document. It was a window into an entirely different mode of thinking, a perspective so alien that its very structure revealed more than its content. "They don't understand us," Emma said quietly, more to herself than to David, "and that's going to be their biggest mistake." She remembered her grandmother's stories, a retired NSA cryptographer who had taught Emma that information was the most powerful weapon humanity would ever develop. Communication wasn't just about sending messages. It was about understanding the spaces between those messages. A holographic display shifted, revealing complex algorithmic translations of the alien communications. Each translation was a careful dance of computational linguistics, machine learning, and human intuition. Most translation algorithms would have produced gibberish, but their system was different. It didn't just translate language. It attempted to understand context, motivation, and the subtle psychological undercurrents that drove communication. David approached, studying the display. The spectral variance in their communication suggests a hierarchical information distribution system, he observed. They're not just sending messages. They're performing a complex social ritual we're barely beginning to comprehend. Emma nodded. The alien civilization's communication patterns revealed more about their weaknesses than any direct intelligence briefing ever could. Their reliance on established protocols, their rigid information hierarchies, their fundamental assumption of technological superiority. These were vulnerabilities waiting to be exploited. A map of solar system communications populated another section of her display. Hundreds of intercepted signals, most from sources that official channels would consider irrelevant or random, began to form intricate patterns. To the untrained eye, it looked like nothing more than electronic noise. To Emma and her team, it was a symphony of potential. "They think we're watching," she said, a slight smile forming at the corner of her mouth. "But they have no idea what we're really seeing." The report from the Galactic Council continued to hover in the background, a testament to an alien civilization's fundamental misunderstanding. Humanity was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. and it would start with something as simple as paying attention. The underground facility stretched beneath the Nevada desert like a neural network carved into living rock. Massive cooling systems hummed, their vibration a constant heartbeat that resonated through corridors lined with quantum processors and experimental computing arrays. Michael Thompson stood before a wall of holographic displays, his fingers dancing across multiple projected interfaces. Unlike the stereotypical tech genius, he moved with the precision of a former Special Forces operative, a background that informed every aspect of his current work. "We're not building a weapon," he explained to the small team gathered around him. "We're building an adaptive intelligence that fundamentally reimagines warfare." The team was a carefully curated mix of brilliance. Dr. Rebecca Nakamura, a computational neuroscientist with a background in adaptive learning systems; Jack Rodriguez, a former Navy SEAL with expertise in unconventional warfare; and Alina Petrova, a quantum computing specialist who had defected from a Russian research program. Their current project existed in a legal and ethical gray area that would make most government oversight committees nervous. They were developing a computational system that could learn, adapt, and completely redesign its operational parameters in microseconds. Traditional military AI is like a chess player who knows only one strategy, Michael continued, pulling up a complex holographic model that shifted and morphed with each gesture. "We're creating an intelligence that can play chess, poker, and completely invent a new game, all simultaneously." Rebecca stepped forward, her fingers tracing the holographic projection. Complex neural networks bloomed and collapsed, rebuilt themselves, then transformed again. "The key is not predictability," she said, "but radical unpredictability." The facility itself was a marvel of misdirection. To the outside world, it appeared to be nothing more than a research facility studying geothermal energy. Layers of bureaucratic camouflage, shell companies, redirected government funding, carefully manipulated research grants, ensured that its true purpose remained hidden. Jack Rodriguez examined a secondary display showing global communication networks. His military background had taught him that information was the most potent weapon. "We're not just developing a system," he said quietly. "We're developing a doctrine of warfare that doesn't exist in any current military handbook." The quantum processors around them represented the cutting edge of human technological innovation. Unlike traditional computing systems that relied on binary logic, these machines operated on principles that bordered on the quantum realm, able to hold multiple computational states simultaneously. Michael pulled up a series of simulations. Each one showed a different scenario of potential alien encounter, with thousands of potential response matrices cascading in real time. The displays looked like living, breathing organisms, mathematical ecosystems that evolved faster than any human could comprehend. "We're creating an intelligence that can deconstruct communication itself," Michael explained. "Not just translate language, but understand the psychological and strategic implications of every single transmission." Alina Petrova, quiet until now, interjected with a technical observation. "Our system doesn't just process information," she said. "It creates new information. It generates communication strategies that don't just respond to a threat. They fundamentally reshape the context of the threat." The team had spent years developing this approach. They understood something that most military strategists missed. Warfare in the cosmic age was no longer about firepower, but about information manipulation. A warning indicator flashed on one of the displays. Jack moved quickly, his fingers dancing across the interface. "Incoming communication signature," he muttered. "Unknown quantum frequency." The room tensed. Every member of the team understood what this could mean. Michael's eyes never left the display. "Record everything," he commanded. "We learn more from what they don't say than what they actually communicate." The holographic displays erupted into a symphony of data. Quantum communication fragments, electromagnetic anomalies, and complex mathematical models danced across the screens. To an outside observer, it would look like pure chaos. To this team, it was a language more complex and nuanced than any spoken words. "We're going to change how humanity is perceived in the universe," Michael said quietly. It wasn't a boast. It was a statement of absolute conviction. The underground facility continued its work, hidden from the world above. Humanity's most sophisticated weapon was being born, not with a bang, but with a whisper of quantum potential. And the universe had no idea what was coming. Europa Colony Delta 7 looked nothing like the pristine research outposts depicted in scientific journals. Carved into the moon's icy landscape, the human settlement was a testament to engineering resilience and human adaptability. Massive pressure domes interconnected like metallic honeycombs, housing nearly 3,000 researchers, miners, and their families. Captain Marcus Green stood in the primary observation hub, watching the latest geological survey results scroll across his display. The mineral deposits they'd discovered were more than just valuable. They were game-changing. Deep beneath Europa's frozen surface, a unique mineral composition promised revolutionary energy technologies that could transform human space exploration. "We've got something special here," he muttered to his second-in-command, Dr. Olivia Chen. The mineral vein they'd mapped stretched for nearly 30 kilometers, hidden beneath layers of ice and complex geological formations. What they didn't know was that their discovery had already caught the attention of the Galactic Council. In the sterile conference chambers of the alien diplomatic complex, representatives from multiple star systems studied the human colony with growing concern. The Zarn delegation, known for their bureaucratic precision and territorial aggression, took the lead. "These humans are becoming problematic," High Coordinator Krulax announced, his multi-jointed appendages manipulating holographic displays. "They continue to expand into territories that have been unclaimed for millennia." The reality was far more complex. The mineral deposit on Europa represented more than just a territorial issue. It was a potential technological breakthrough that could shift the balance of power in the known galaxy. Back on the colony, Captain Green received the first hints of potential conflict. Communication intercepts suggested unusual fleet movements near the outer solar system. Military-grade quantum transmissions flickered at the edges of their detection systems. "Something's brewing," Dr. Chen said, her fingers dancing across a complex communication analysis interface. "These transmission patterns don't match any standard Council diplomatic protocols." The Council's initial approach was typically bureaucratic. A formal communication arrived, a densely worded document that essentially demanded human withdrawal from the Europa colony. The language was complex, filled with diplomatic obfuscation that would have confused most human diplomatic corps. But Captain Green and his team were not most diplomatic representatives. "They're giving us an ultimatum," Marcus explained to the colony's leadership council. "But they're doing it in a way that reveals more about their weaknesses than their strength." The colony itself was more than just a research station. Every structure, every system had been designed with multiple contingencies. Modular habitat units could be reconfigured within hours. Life support systems were redundant to the point of absurdity. The humans who settled Europa understood one fundamental truth: survival was about adaptability. Dr. Chen's communication analysis revealed something fascinating. The Council's transmission wasn't just a diplomatic message. It was a complex social ritual, a communication designed to maintain hierarchical structures more than to actually resolve any real conflict. "They're performing a diplomatic dance," she explained. "But they have no idea that we're reading between the lines." The first signs of actual conflict came subtly. Long-range sensors detected the initial approach of the Council's pacification fleet, a term that would have been laughable if it weren't so potentially devastating. Captain Green gathered his team. The colony's defense protocols were unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. Where traditional military systems relied on predetermined response matrices, the humans had built something far more dynamic. "We're not going to fight their war," Marcus explained. "We're going to make them fight a war they don't even understand." In orbit around Europa, the first Council vessels began to assemble. Massive ships with standardized designs, equipped with centuries of proven combat algorithms. They moved with a precision that spoke of computational perfection. But perfection, the humans knew, was just another form of predictability. As the fleet assembled, deep within the Europa colony, a different kind of preparation was taking place. Not just military preparation, but a comprehensive strategic response that would challenge everything the Galactic Council understood about warfare. The spark of conflict had been lit, and humanity was about to show the universe exactly what that meant. The first wave of Council warships approached Europa with calculated precision. Each vessel moved in a mathematically perfect formation, their computational systems running millennia-old combat algorithms that had never known defeat. They were about to learn the true meaning of the word unexpected. Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez sat in the underground command center beneath Europa's surface, her fingers hovering above a complex interface that looked more like an abstract art installation than a military control system. Surrounding her, a team of specialists worked with an almost supernatural calm. "First communication intercept complete," announced David Chen, his voice steady. "They're broadcasting on frequencies they believe are completely secure." Emma smiled. Secure was a relative term. The human response began not with weapons, but with information. Thousands of repurposed communication satellites, devices originally designed for weather monitoring, internet connectivity, and scientific research, transformed into a living, breathing network of electronic warfare platforms. "We're not going to fight their war," Emma explained to her team. "We're going to make them fight a war they can't even comprehend." The first algorithmic attacks were subtle. Communication channels began to decay, not through direct interference, but through carefully constructed quantum noise that introduced microscopic uncertainties into the alien fleet's computational systems. Navigation systems began to receive conflicting data. Quantum communication pathways became labyrinths of misdirection. The Council's perfectly calculated fleet found itself navigating a battlefield where the very concept of distance and direction became fluid. Jack Rodriguez, no relation to Emma, but cut from the same strategic cloth, monitored the electromagnetic spectrum. "They're running standardized threat assessment protocols," he observed. "Each ship is trying to correlate its data with the fleet's central command. We're going to use that against them." The attack was psychological as much as it was technological. Human-generated communication fragments began to infiltrate the alien fleet's information networks. These weren't simple jamming signals or traditional electronic warfare techniques. They were carefully constructed linguistic and mathematical puzzles designed to introduce cognitive dissonance into the alien computational systems. Dr. Rebecca Nakamura, watching from a secondary monitoring station, explained the strategy. "Their computational systems are designed to reach consensus," she said. "We're introducing information that makes consensus impossible." Holographic displays showed the gradual breakdown of the Council fleet's coordinated movement. What had begun as a perfectly synchronized formation began to fragment. Ships started to drift microscopically off their predetermined paths. The truly brilliant part of the strategy was its subtlety. The Council's fleet wasn't being destroyed. It was being confused. "Look at their communication protocols," Emma pointed out to her team. The alien transmission patterns had begun to develop strange, almost organic irregularities. They're trying so hard to maintain their hierarchical information structure that they can't see how we're dismantling it. Quantum communication relays, originally designed for scientific research, became weapons of unprecedented sophistication. Each relay introduced mathematically precise uncertainties into the alien fleet's computational ecosystem. "We're not hacking their systems," Jack explained. "We're making their systems hack themselves." The Europa colony itself became part of the defense. Modular communication arrays shifted and reconfigured in real time, creating a defensive network that was fundamentally impossible to predict or counter. High above Europa's icy surface, the Council fleet began to experience the first true manifestations of human unconventional warfare. Navigation systems began to provide conflicting data. Communication channels developed unexpected latencies. Threat assessment algorithms started to generate increasingly bizarre threat models. "They're fighting themselves now," Emma said quietly. The most terrifying part for the Council fleet wasn't the potential for destruction. It was the fundamental challenge to their understanding of conflict itself. Humanity wasn't just fighting a different kind of war, they were redefining the entire concept of warfare. As the first Council ships began to drift uncertainly, Emma Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. The real battle was just beginning. And the universe was about to learn that humanity played by entirely different rules. The transformation began in the most unexpected places. Agricultural research drones repurposed into advanced communication interceptors. Commercial satellite networks reconfigured into complex defensive arrays. Mining equipment became the backbone of an unprecedented technological defense system. Michael Thompson stood in the heart of the Improvisation Center, a facility that defied every conventional understanding of military infrastructure. Around him, teams of engineers, programmers, and researchers worked with a frenetic energy that bordered on artistic creation. "Improvisation is our greatest weapon," he announced to the team. "Every system can be something other than what it was designed to be." A wall of screens showed the ongoing conflict with the Council fleet. But these weren't traditional military displays. Each screen represented a different layer of technological adaptation, a living, breathing ecosystem of human innovation. Dr. Elena Petrova worked on a cluster of quantum communication relays that had once been part of a deep space astronomical research project. "We're not just changing technology," she explained to a junior researcher. "We're creating a completely new paradigm of technological existence." In orbit around Europa, commercial communication satellites began to transform. What had been a network for global internet and telecommunications became a sophisticated defensive grid. Each satellite was now a node in a complex, self-organizing system that could reconfigure itself faster than any alien computational model could predict. Jack Rodriguez oversaw the military adaptation team. Their workspace looked more like a mad scientist's laboratory than a traditional military command center. 3D printers hummed, creating custom components that blended cutting-edge technology with unexpected materials. "Agricultural monitoring drones," he said, holding up a device that looked like a cross between a scientific instrument and a piece of industrial equipment, "are now our eyes and ears in space." The true brilliance of the human approach was its fundamental rejection of specialized design. Where alien technologies were created with precise, narrow purposes, human technology existed in a state of constant potential. A mining drill originally designed for extracting resources on distant asteroids was now a sophisticated communication jamming device. Agricultural sensors became advanced threat detection systems. Even consumer-grade computer networks were mobilized into a distributed computational defense infrastructure. Dr. Rebecca Nakamura demonstrated the core principle to a group of visiting researchers. "Look at this," she said, pulling up a holographic display that showed a constantly shifting network of technological connections. "Traditional military systems are like a chess game with predetermined moves. We're playing a game where the rules change with every millisecond." The Improvisation Center was a testament to human creativity. Walls were covered with diagrams that looked like complex mathematical art, each line representing a potential technological transformation. Whiteboards showed impossible connections between seemingly unrelated technologies. Michael Thompson watched as a team of engineers converted a deep-sea exploration robot into a space-based communication relay. "We don't see limitations," he explained to an observer. "We see potential." The Council fleet continued to struggle with the human defensive system. Their computational models, developed over millennia of consistent warfare, began to break down when confronted with a technological ecosystem that refused to follow any recognizable pattern. In the facility's central hub, a massive computational system tracked the ongoing conflict. But this wasn't a traditional military tracking system. It was a living, breathing entity that could generate potential scenarios faster than any alien technology could comprehend. "We're not just defending," Emma Rodriguez explained during a strategy briefing. "We're constantly creating new modes of engagement that don't exist in any known military doctrine." The most terrifying aspect for the Council was the speed of human adaptation. A technological weakness discovered in one moment could be transformed into a strength in the next. Communication systems that were compromised would be completely redesigned within minutes. Jack Rodriguez pointed to a display showing the ongoing technological transformation. "This is why we'll win," he said quietly. "Because for us, every limitation is just an opportunity for innovation." As the conflict continued, the human technological response became something more than a defensive strategy. It was a statement, a fundamental challenge to the universe's understanding of technological potential. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the very concept of technological existence. The psychological warfare began with a whisper. Dr. Olivia Chen stood before a wall of communication interfaces, her fingers moving with surgical precision across holographic displays. Around her, a team of linguists, psychologists, and communication specialists worked in near-perfect synchronization. "We're not going to defeat them with force," she explained to a group of junior researchers. "We're going to defeat them with understanding." The Council fleet continued its approach toward Europa, each vessel moving with what they believed was mathematical precision. What they didn't realize was that every transmission, every communication, was being dissected and transformed into a weapon more potent than any physical armament. Emma Rodriguez watched from the underground command center, a slight smile playing across her lips. "They think communication is about information," she muttered. "We know it's about perception." The human strategy was brilliantly subtle. Instead of blocking alien communications, they began to subtly manipulate them. Quantum communication relays introduced microscopic variations, not enough to completely disrupt transmission, but sufficient to create cascading uncertainty. Jack Rodriguez oversaw the psychological manipulation team. Their workspace looked more like an advanced research psychology lab than a military command center. Walls were covered with complex diagrams showing communication patterns, psychological response models, and intricate network analyses. "Look at their communication hierarchy," he explained to a group of researchers. "It's so rigid that the slightest introduction of uncertainty will cause complete systemic breakdown." The first signs of psychological impact began to show in the Council fleet's communication patterns. Transmission delays became increasingly erratic. Command structures started to show signs of internal confusion. What had been a perfectly synchronized fleet began to develop almost organic irregularities. Dr. Rebecca Nakamura explained the core principle. "Their entire communication system is based on consensus and hierarchical information flow," she said. "We're introducing information that makes consensus impossible." Holographic displays showed the gradual breakdown of the alien fleet's coordinated movement. Transmissions began to develop strange, almost neurotic patterns. Ships started to request confirmation from command structures that were becoming increasingly unreliable. The most brilliant aspect of the psychological warfare was its subtlety. Humans weren't destroying the Council's communication systems. They were making the systems destroy themselves. "We're exploiting their fundamental psychological limitations," Emma explained during a strategy briefing. "Their entire civilization is built on the assumption of predictability. We're going to show them the true meaning of chaos." Linguistic teams worked around the clock, creating communication fragments that would introduce maximum psychological uncertainty. These weren't simple disinformation campaigns. They were carefully constructed linguistic puzzles designed to challenge the very foundation of alien communication protocols. Michael Thompson watched the developing strategy with a sense of academic fascination. "We're fighting a war at the level of perception," he told Dr. Chen. "Every transmission is a potential psychological weapon." The Council fleet began to experience increasingly bizarre communication anomalies. Navigation systems started to provide conflicting data. Threat assessment algorithms generated progressively more nonsensical threat models. The fleet's internal communication network began to resemble a panicked, confused organism. "They can't comprehend that we're deliberately causing this," Jack observed. "Their entire understanding of conflict is based on direct confrontation. We're fighting a war they can't even see." Psychological profile databases were carefully constructed, analyzing every intercepted communication. The human team wasn't just reading alien transmissions, they were understanding the psychological framework that created those transmissions. Dr. Olivia Chen pulled up a complex holographic display showing communication pattern analysis. "Look at how their hierarchical communication structure responds to uncertainty," she explained. "It's like a rigid biological system confronted with an unknown pathogen." The most terrifying aspect for the Council was the fundamental challenge to their understanding of communication itself. Humanity wasn't just interfering with their transmissions, they were demonstrating that communication was far more fluid and complex than the aliens had ever imagined. As the first signs of psychological breakdown became apparent in the Council fleet, Emma Rodriguez allowed herself a moment of reflection. They were fighting a war that the universe had never seen before, a conflict conducted entirely in the realm of perception and understanding. And they were winning. The moment of critical transformation began with a whisper of quantum uncertainty. High Coordinator Krulax stood on the bridge of the Council's flagship, watching as their perfectly calculated invasion strategy began to unravel. The holographic displays around him flickered with increasing irregularity, communication pathways dissolving like frost under an unexpected heat. "This is impossible," he muttered, his multi-jointed appendages moving frantically across communication interfaces that no longer responded with their previous precision. Deep within the underground command center on Europa, Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez and her team watched the unfolding scenario with the clinical detachment that bordered on scientific observation. Each breakdown in the Council fleet's communication was a data point, a carefully studied moment of systemic collapse. "We're not destroying them," Michael Thompson explained to the team. "We're revealing the fundamental weaknesses in their entire approach to conflict." The turning point wasn't a dramatic explosion or a traditional military victory. It was a slow, methodical deconstruction of the alien fleet's most basic assumptions about warfare, communication, and strategic engagement. Dr. Rebecca Nakamura pulled up a complex holographic display showing the cascading system failures. "Look at how their hierarchical communication structure responds to uncertainty," she said. "It's like watching a mathematical model of entropy in real time." The Council fleet had been built on millennia of consistent warfare protocols. Computational systems that had never known defeat were now experiencing something they had no framework to understand: complete systemic unpredictability. Jack Rodriguez monitored the communication intercepts. "They're trying to reestablish their command structure," he observed. "But every attempt is introducing more uncertainty." What made the human strategy so devastating was its fundamental approach. They weren't fighting a traditional war of destruction. They were conducting a comprehensive deconstruction of the alien civilization's most basic understanding of conflict. Communication satellites originally designed for scientific research became nodes in a living, breathing network of psychological warfare. Agricultural monitoring drones transformed into advanced communication interceptors. Every system was becoming something other than its original design. "Improvisation is our greatest weapon," Emma told the team. The underground facility hummed with a sense of almost scientific excitement. This was more than a military engagement. It was the ultimate proof of human adaptability. The Council fleet began to experience increasingly bizarre communication anomalies. Navigation systems provided conflicting data. Threat assessment algorithms generated progressively more nonsensical threat models. The fleet's internal communication network began to resemble a panicked, confused organism. High Coordinator Krulax watched in growing horror as his fleet's perfect formation dissolved. Communication channels that had been stable for millennia began to develop strange, almost organic irregularities. Ships started to request confirmation from command structures that were becoming increasingly unreliable. "They're fighting themselves now," Michael Thompson observed, watching the holographic displays that showed the gradual breakdown of the alien fleet's coordinated movement. The most terrifying aspect for the Council was the fundamental challenge to their understanding of conflict itself. Humanity wasn't just interfering with their transmissions, They were demonstrating that communication was far more fluid and complex than the aliens had ever imagined. Dr. Olivia Chen's linguistic team had created communication fragments that introduced maximum psychological uncertainty. These weren't simple disinformation campaigns. They were carefully constructed linguistic puzzles designed to challenge the very foundation of alien communication protocols. "We're conducting warfare at the level of perception," Emma explained during a strategy briefing. "Every transmission is a potential psychological weapon." The turning point became clear. The Council fleet was no longer a unified fighting force. It had become a collection of increasingly isolated and confused vessels, each struggling to maintain some semblance of its original purpose. High Coordinator Krillax made a final desperate attempt to reassert control, but each communication only introduced more uncertainty, more chaos into a system that could no longer maintain its fundamental structure. "They think technology is about control," Michael Thompson said quietly. "We know it's about potential." As the first Council ships began to drift uncertainly, Emma Rodriguez allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had done more than win a conflict. They had fundamentally challenged the universe's understanding of warfare, communication, and technological potential. The real battle was just beginning, and humanity was rewriting the rules of engagement. The aftermath was not what anyone expected. In the sterile conference chambers of the Galactic Council, the silence was deafening. High Coordinator Krillax stood before the assembled representatives, his once proud posture now broken and uncertain. The holographic displays behind him told a story of complete and total systemic collapse, a defeat so complete that it challenged everything the Council understood about conflict. "We were not defeated," Krillax began, his voice a mixture of confusion and barely contained desperation. "We were unmade." Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez sat in the observation chamber, watching the proceedings with a calm that belied the magnitude of what had just occurred. Beside her, Michael Thompson reviewed the final analysis of their strategic engagement. "They're struggling to even articulate what happened," Michael observed. "Their entire conceptual framework of warfare has been dismantled." The human response to the Council's invasion had been nothing short of revolutionary. It wasn't a traditional military victory. It was a comprehensive deconstruction of the aliens' most fundamental understanding of conflict, communication, and technological potential. Dr. Rebecca Nakamura presented the initial report to the human leadership. "We didn't just defend ourselves," she explained. "We demonstrated a completely new paradigm of strategic engagement." The Europa colony stood as a testament to human resilience. What had begun as a potential site of conflict had become the epicenter of a fundamental shift in cosmic understanding. The mineral deposits that had initially sparked the confrontation now seemed almost insignificant compared to the true value of what had been discovered. Jack Rodriguez reviewed the communication intercepts. The Council's internal communications were in complete disarray. Their hierarchical system of governance had been so thoroughly disrupted that they could barely maintain basic diplomatic functionality. "They're trying to understand how we did this," he said, pointing to a series of increasingly desperate communication attempts. "But they're asking the wrong questions." The human strategy had been brilliantly multilayered. It wasn't just about defending the Europa colony. It was about demonstrating a completely different approach to technological and strategic thinking. High Coordinator Krillax continued his report to the Council. "The human method of engagement defies all our computational models," he admitted. "They do not fight. They transform." In the underground command center, Emma Rodriguez led a debrief of the team that had orchestrated the unprecedented victory. It wasn't a celebration of military might, but an academic dissection of their approach. "We challenged their entire understanding of communication," Dr. Olivia Chen explained. "Every transmission was a puzzle, every interaction a potential point of systemic disruption. The most profound aspect of the victory was its absolute nature. The humans hadn't destroyed the Council fleet, they had rendered it fundamentally incapable of functioning. Each ship, each communication system had been transformed into a source of its own destruction." Michael Thompson pulled up a final analysis. "Look at this," he said to the team. "They're so locked into their existing paradigms that they can't even conceive of an alternative approach to conflict." The Galactic Council's response was unprecedented. Instead of retaliation, they requested a comprehensive diplomatic engagement. But it was clear that this was not a traditional diplomatic approach. They were seeking to understand. "We're not just a species to be categorized," Emma told the Leadership Council. "We're a fundamental challenge to their entire understanding of technological and strategic potential." The mineral deposits on Europa became almost an afterthought. The real discovery was humanity itself, a species that could transform limitation into opportunity, that could see potential where others saw only rigid systems. High Coordinator Krillax made a final desperate attempt to understand. "How?" he asked during a direct communication with human leadership. "How did you do this?" The human response was simple and profound. "We don't see boundaries," Emma Rodriguez replied. "We see possibilities." In the weeks that followed, the Galactic Council underwent its most significant transformation in millennia. The encounter with humanity had revealed fundamental weaknesses in their approach to communication, technology, and strategic thinking. The universe had underestimated humanity, and it would never make that mistake again.